Hi all. We'll give everyone just about 30 seconds to a minute or so just to sign up because we've got a few people coming as we speak, and then we'll be with you. Hi guys, welcome to this week's webinar in regards to the 9 fatal mistakes that most novice buy-to-let investors make. I'm with sales director here, Paul Tillett, and we're going to run you through what we feel that the mistakes that people commonly make time and time again. We've been doing this a number of years, and we have pretty similar reasons why people might not go for a particular product, and the reasons are often emotional rather than logical. So we've compiled a list of the 9 fatal mistakes, and yeah, let's start. I'm going to hand over to Paul. Paul's going to run through most of this, and we'll go from there.
Hi everyone. I think initially we sort of look at this as a subject and get the first thing across is the business. We've said this many times in our webinars. People should have a business plan, and therefore it should be considered as a business. It's not somewhere you're going to live. It's not a property you're going to have to fall in love with. You're not going to have to work out the area if you'd lived there. You don't have to go and visit it. It's a numbers game, and that's the story. So my first point is it's subjective and not objective. It's actually the whole point of this saying is you're being objective about the whole story. You're looking at it as a business decision. So it should be either on return on investment, the ROI, or your capital growth. This or a mixture of the two is key. I mean, forget that the flooring in the apartment, is it hardwood, is it soft? It's pretty irrelevant. What's the finishes in the kitchen like? Is it southwest facing? Does the sun rise in the morning? Is there a balcony? I mean, all these little elements add costs to your purchase, add costs to your investment. But when it comes to the rental market, tend not to add much in the way of returns, or little in the way of returns. So that's why I always think when you're looking at these properties, you're looking at the business model, you look at the fact that, what do they return me? I'm not too fast. The lower the investment gets in, the better your return you get. As long as the places are clean and modern looking property, most of these properties are the same. They're all built to good standard with good kitchens, good finishes, new bathrooms, great flooring. It becomes such a subjective thing, and you add cost with getting very little return. So that's my first pitfall that most people fall into. They get subjective and they're not objective.
I think you've got to look at the market as well. I mean, we launched something in Manchester this week, and I think what you've got to look at is, unless you're at home pretty much all day with a family, a young family, most of the day you're actually out. So the chances of you getting that, southeasterly apartment with afternoon and evening sun or morning sun when you have a coffee. I mean, how many people have time in the morning to go and sit out on their balcony or look at the sun? So quite a few people, they just tend to get ready, get to work, get back, maybe go to the gym in the evening, or go out for a few drinks. That's the kind of market that you're aiming at. You're aiming at the young professional market. Therefore, the majority of time, they're not actually in the property. And I think, like Paul says, we've had properties this week, and 2 sides of the building, one faced east, one faced west. And on the east side of the building, there was only one bed. But everyone wanted this particular one bed simply because it was west facing. So they assumed that they would get more sun in the afternoon. But actually, it was irrelevant. So what you got, you pay 15 to 20,000 more for that side of the building, and you would never get that back percentage-wise in terms of growth or income. So again, 100%, it should just come back to basics.
I think a big element of this sits, if you're on the PBSA, the old purpose-built student accommodation, I think people looking at those studio apartments for students, it surprised me all the time. I spoke to one client, and he was discussing the fact that, he hasn't got a very big window and it's looking over the river. And I said to him, well, how many students do you know that spend an afternoon in looking over the river, contemplating the world. I said most of them are sort of nocturnal creatures. They go out, and the fact they got windows is actually quite annoying. So they like playing computer games all day. So, you know, students aren't sat on balconies looking at rivers and contemplating the world. They're actually probably sleeping most of the days like vampires. So anyway. Next, I think key and something that people do a lot. You must consider your budget. You know, don't stretch yourselves. You do your business plan. You have your numbers. You have what you're going to do. Your funding, your costs. You just cash flow in this business is key, as is in any business. And the moment you stretch your business too far, you're in a bit of trouble. You find yourself in difficulty, and you end up. It becomes a problem. Remember, as is a business, this thing has to make money. So if it's becoming costly too much, or you're overspending on it, it's no longer an investment. It becomes a liability. It becomes something you're worrying about. And the idea of this business is to get into it, is to make some money, and is to not stretch yourself. So the first key thing is check your budget, make sure that budget's correct, and stick to it. Do not get dissuaded. And that is my key. And I think an element of an issue that a lot of investors tend to stretch themselves. They like something a little bit better. They want the one with a balcony. As I've said, you don't need balconies. You don't need, you know, the better finishes. It's stick to your budget, make sure your numbers are right, and don't deviate.
I think quite again, I had someone yesterday who came in and they had a particular budget that didn't stretch for Manchester. They wanted Manchester. However, their budget just didn't stretch for that. So what they would have had to do to get into Manchester, they would have had to buy something lesser, lower quality. Now, for them, that was okay. We dissuaded them to get that from getting that, because if you have something that's low quality in a particular area, it's not going to rent. People don't want the low quality. So your best actually is to just, you know, go back to square one, start again, and go, do you know what? Let's look at a different area, because actually it's all about the return. Going back to point one as well, it's a return and return on your income, return on your investment. It's that simple. So area is just subjective. Someone says they like Manchester because they know it better than Liverpool. However, it's all about the return.
This then leads us on to, quite nicely, make sure there is demand in the area you're buying for rental properties. It's no good buying in an area where there's never zero demand, but you want an area where there's, I don't know, a growing economy, maybe a transient workforce, people that are coming to and from. Manchester is a perfect example, like Liverpool. Growing cities where you get people turning up for new jobs are being created in those areas, maybe testing the area out before they buy in an area. A young workforce, although first-time buyers, the numbers are picking up a bit. The rental income and the rental market, should I say, is very, very dominated by young professionals who haven't quite got their deposits together, and in the process, they need to be near where they work. They like to be convenient for work and play, so they like to be near the city centres. They like to be in areas where there's demand. So that's the key thing. And when you're looking at an area and you know the area, make sure you choose the property that's suitable for that area. It's no good buying or renting a 3-bed flat in an area where you've probably got maybe a demand for 1 or 2-bed flats. You're going to be left with a property that you can't rent for as much as you should rent, given the amount of probably outlay you've had on it. So you buy the property that's in demand for that area. Typically, we obviously know that 1 beds rent very well. Also, the 2 beds, again, people can share. 3 beds, not really a good option, but you may find a market where it is. But the key element is here, make sure there's demand in the area you're buying for rental properties and research the type of property you need.
I think that brings us on to sort of like the next step in terms of the procrastination that what we have with a lot of people. We have so many people who delay putting off for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, you should be getting letting agents. Use letting agents and use companies, whether it's ourselves, whether it's other companies, that actually can either first of all find you products in the right areas that match your requirements. You know, there are a lot of companies which actually aren't independent. They tell you they're independent, and actually they only have maybe 2 or 3 developments that they're advising on, and they're tied into those developers. And the issue that you then have is you're then pigeonholed into an area. They just badger you and tell you about a particular development, which is fantastic as far as they, from their eyes. But actually, that's because that's the only development they have to sell within your budget on the books. Use an independent agent. They're going to be far more conducive to what you're looking to achieve over the long run. and then we can put you in touch with letting agents and management agents in the area, which can obviously take your apartment onto the next level in terms of the income side, because that's the key. You can have the best apartment in the world. If no one knows it's there, it's irrelevant. So we have to make sure that we get you tied up with the best letting agents as well. Importantly as well, there's never a perfect time. I mean, Paul, using the city, I know you did different things, bonds and things. I know with stocks and shares, people said there was never the perfect time, and so you're never going to get in at the bottom and out at the top. Right?
No, you never buy at the perfect time. You never sell at the perfect time. What you do is you just try and remember, it's a long-term plan. You're in property for 5 to 10 years realistically. If you're in for 2 or 3 year stretch, probably isn't long enough to create a return or a growth story for yourself. So I always say property is a longer term play, and in that time, I mean, you'll never be able to buy at that perfect time. You'll never be able to sell at the perfect time. But as long as you gauge and you're happy and your numbers are correct, you put yourself into the market at that time. If you've only just started looking, it's not a problem, because if you've done your business plan, you've got your figures out in front of you, you know what's right. If this ticks a box, it's the right property for you. You don't need to delay going, oh, I haven't been on the market for a while, I need to look a bit longer. No, if you've done your work properly and your prep work's been done and you set that plan in motion, the reality is if you've come across something, you said, I want 7% a year and I want a low growth profile, and you find that property, then that is the one you go for. The deviation, the delaying, the procrastination, if you like to use the word, it's something, it's not in this, it's a business, and sometimes striking early is the right thing. If you're in early and you get it done and you like what you see and the market moves away from you later on, you'll be sat there looking back and saying, I wish I'd done it 6 months ago. So when people come on, they say, well, I've only just started looking. If they've done their work properly, they've done their prep work and they've got their business plan and they know the numbers they want to do, then it's always the right time if it's your right numbers. And that's it. That's the key here for me. So it's business plan, your numbers, and when you look at the property and you look at the area you're looking at, and you've got that area and you like it and it hits your numbers, then that's the right property. Simple as that.
I spoke with someone a couple of weeks back actually, and they said that when's the buy-to-let market going to end? And then again, this goes back to you're not going to buy at the perfect time or sell at the perfect time. When's the buy-to-let market going to end? Well, actually, it doesn't end. It just goes in peaks and troughs. So whereas you wind back time sort of 3 or 4 years, that was probably the ideal time to buy in Manchester. Go back sort of 6, 7 years, that was the ideal time to buy in London. But again, very few people bit the bullet and did it in that period of time. And if you did, you lucked in. But again, let's be realistic. The people that bought 4 years ago in Manchester, a lot of them have now sold because they wanted to max in on their profit. But actually, they could have held on for a little bit longer and it would have still gone up. So you won't have that perfect time to sell either. But yeah, in my opinion, there's not going to be an end to the buy-to-let market. You will just potentially invest in a time where you won't make as much as you could have previously. But then history repeats itself. There may be another sort of stagnation in terms of property prices where they slip by or they're pretty static. But as rents go up, then it looks like you could start to increase the yields if you bought at that particular point. So yes, we're not where we were 4 years ago, but we're certainly not in a time when we're looking at the death of the buy-to-let market, as in some papers will paint.
Another thing as well on that point is an article I've written, which you guys can see in our magazine next month. I discuss the advent or the arrival of first-time buyers. It's now the highest it was pre-2008. It's sat at 2007 levels, where there's just shy of 397,000 people, new first-time buyers to the market, which is a statistic that is music to the ears of property investors. It's the tier of property buyers that support the market and push it forward. And this is now still growing. So this is still a good sign. The market is in rude health still.
And also, I think other people delay because quite a lot of people actually wait until their properties are built or complete. So let's say that they buy something off plan. They wait until one's done, and then they buy the next one. Then they wait until that one's done, and then they buy the next one. And actually, what you're just doing there is you're preventing yourself from maximizing your profit and maximizing your growth. There are many financial advisors that are risk adverse. So they always say, oh no, wait to see a return on one until you go for the second one. However, if you look at all of the best investors over the years, it doesn't matter whether they've been in property or the stock market, what they've done is they've gone in at the right time in terms of when it's at potentially at a low, not at its lowest, but potentially at a low. And they've punted for that. And what they've taken, of course, with any investment, there's an element of risk. So they've taken a risk. They've not waited. If you buy something now and you wait a year and a half for it to be complete, and then you go in and buy again just because the last one's completed, well, the fact is you're probably going to be paying 15 to 20% more just for waiting. So actually, the time is right at the moment. So it's about making that and just maximizing your potential. In terms of the next, in the next side of things, going back to the beginning, we don't look, don't base too much on the aesthetic side of things. It's not about what your apartment looks like. It's not about people think, and you've got to look at what age is, the average age for our investors is, we worked it out the other day, so it's 54. So obviously some are younger, some are older. But when you reach 54, your outlook in terms of where you would live is totally different to when you were maybe 25. But actually, the market that you're aiming at is the 25 to 28-year-old. For example, in Media City, for example, in Manchester, you're aiming at the young professionals. So you go and you look at somewhere and think, well, okay, I may not live there, or aesthetically, it's not where I'd live, or it's, for example, we have one at the moment, which is 5-minute walk from Old Trafford, and we had one client said, but yeah, I wouldn't want to live near Old Trafford. Well, that's fine, because that particular client was an older client, and they probably wouldn't want to live near Old Trafford. However, we have so many people that do want to live around there because they're maybe in their late 20s. They're Manchester United supporters, so they do want to live in that area, and that's where the demand is. So again, we just simply go back to basics, focus on the area where there's high demand for rental, and put your emotions to one side.
Right, okay, so setting a strategy. This is an element to this, which is perhaps a conclusion or the last point I'd like to come up when you're doing your strategy. But on this stage, it's sort of choosing a sort of property you're after. Older properties are great, but they do come with problems. You've got to remember that you're sort of the latest properties you're buying. If you're buying a brand new property, has a 10-year warranty, the modern build, the EPC ratings are very high, the finishes are good. You're pretty much not going to have to spend too much time or money on it for the first 5 to 10 years. There may be the odd thing going wrong, but these washing machines and tumble dryers or dishwashers maybe have a small error, but they've all got 2-year warranties on these as well. So the cost of buying a new property is low. The main thing you have to consider when you're buying a resale or an older property, you've got the first thing I mentioned was the EPC ratings. Now, you have to hit these targets. They've been set up by the government. At the moment, the bar is much higher than it was. It's not as high as it could be, but they're going to set out higher again. And this will mean a lot of remedial work for you, the investor, when buying a resale property, an older property, an old house or something you need to convert into flats, whatever. It's a tough thing to do. It's difficult. You get involved with builders in construction. You've got to remember, you're an investor. You're not a builder. You're not a developer. It's a different profile for you. It's a different type of business. You want to be in. You want to buy something with the numbers, and you don't want to be tied to it. You don't want maintenance issues. You get older properties, you have maintenance issues. There's constant problems. You all know. I'm sure many of you live in older properties, and you're forever doing something to them. You maybe even paid your mortgages off, but it still costs a lot of money to stay in these houses because you're constantly doing something to them. There's always something that needs doing in an older property. You don't get that in modern properties. So, I mean, that is why I always say to people, avoid an older property. You want to get into this investment or this buy-to-let business in a nice, easy, and convenient way. You want to have it managed, and you don't want to have bills that will impact on your returns. That's key. So that's why I always say avoid the older properties. Rental rates, again, another important one here. This is a key one to focus on. Whether it's your builder portfolio, the whole thing on your rental rates is that rental rates in any area are very, very sensitive to the slightest change. In many cases, even like £50 a month difference between your 2-bed and someone else's 2-bed, because yours may be 2 floors higher, and you think I paid a bit more for it, so I had the roof. I'm telling you now, a 2-bed property in the same building on 2 floors below is £50 a month cheaper. That will probably rent out. It's a drive to the cheapest property. People, when they're renting, they in that area, in that building. They're not necessarily worried about if it's west or east facing. If it's the same value, then maybe the same price. But you've got to remember to set your prices in the areas at the right levels. If you don't, it'll be the difference between you having a fully occupied apartment or one with a lot of void periods. And the one thing that kills any investor in a buy-to-let market is void periods, as we know. So that is key. So always, always, always set your prices right and don't get too greedy. I think last is the key one, is setting a strategy. And that is akin to the business plan. The business plan sits at the start, and then you have a strategy through which you're going to do your investing and buying and buy-to-let. And that's why I think it's key. I mentioned here, whether it's you're building a portfolio, whether you're going to buy and rent one out, whether you're going to buy it and sell it, flip as we like to call it, you must always have a strategy. And even if that strategy is an exit strategy, always come to the market knowing what you want to do with it, whether you want to make it for an income earner for your family, whether you want to pass it down to a family, put it in a company, whatever that is, you have a strategy in mind, so that guides your decisions throughout this process. And remember, this is something you're going to be in real terms for at least 5, 10, 20 years. I mean, some people have been in it for longer, but that is the point. It's a long-term investment. It's a strategy you need to have, and that strategy you need to stick to. If the strategy changes, fine, but you change it, you change your direction, and you make it, and you keep going in those directions. You don't deviate from this strategy, because all of a sudden we sat there 3 or 4 years down the road saying, well, hang on, when I started out, I had a business plan, I had a strategy, I changed that a bit, now I'm not where I want to be, because you knew what you wanted to do when you set out, so stick to that. If it changes dramatically, review it, look at your business plan, decide whether that works with this new strategy, set your new strategy, and then go forward from there. But always, always have a business plan and a strategy in mind when you're coming into the property market.
And these are things, guys, we can help with quite comfortably. We have a little a booklet that we can send to people, and they can start to fill in their business plan, because a lot of people say that they want to do a business plan, but they don't know where to start, which is no problem. We understand. So we've compiled something where we can start to formulate a business plan, and it's just a few simple questions. So, for example, what do you need to make it work for you? So if, for example, you are getting 4% in a current particular investment, well, you obviously need at least 5.5%, 6% to make it worthwhile changing. There's no point in changing from investment A to B for the same percentage. So we have a business plan there, and it just says the income that you desire, the growth that you're looking for, how long you're looking to hold the project for, whether you want to manage it yourself or whether you want someone to manage it. So we've got those business plans. So if people want those, we can send those out, no problem. Now, over to you guys. You should have a speech bubble or a question mark on your screen, guys. So feel free to ask any questions. So we've got one that's come through quite early. Can a letting agent tell you the perfect time to buy or sell a property? Is it reliable? So we've got here, can a letting agent really tell you the perfect time to buy or sell a property? Is it reliable? Or do they just want to induce you to enter the market to meet their sales quota? Well, if you've got an unscrupulous agent, then yeah, that's what we're going back to. If they're not independent, they will take you and try and get commission in regard to their project. However, you need to do your own research and your own due diligence in regards to when to actually make that purchase. There's a lot of newspapers at the moment saying that the buy-to-let is at an end. However, you've just got to do your due diligence, and if the reality stacks up, if you can speak to a letting agent, independent, so let's say we're selling a project, we go and advise project X. Well, you've then, if you want to take that due diligence one step further, go and speak to an independent management company and ask them, if I had an apartment in this area today, what would it let for? They will have to give you a rough estimation and then work it backwards. So if you've got a property that's 200,000, for argument's sake, and the agent has said that you can go and let that property out for £1,000 a month, so £12,000 a year. Well, in a crude way, maths way, you know that that's 6% per year. Of course, you'll have certain costs associated with that, but that's something that you guys will have to appreciate. Now, I'm guessing most people are here because they believe that there is potential in the buy-to-let market, but there's still due diligence that you can do independently outside of companies like us.
The bottom line is, as we said in that earlier slide, no one can tell you the perfect time to buy or sell. You never set the perfect time. You set at the time that's right for you to buy at the time that's right for you. If your numbers fit the figures you have in front of you, your business plan says that's a good property, then you're fine. You're bringing a business to the table when you're starting. It's your time and your exit. Is it the perfect time? No, but if it's the right time for you and your business plan says it's the right time, then it's the fine. As I said, just get involved. It's never a perfect time to buy or sell in anything. You don't know. You haven't got a crystal ball. None of us know. I've not been flown back to the future. I don't know what's going on, but we can make calculated guesses from market trends. And if the figures fit, then it's perfect for you.
You actually only know the perfect time after the event. That's the reality.
Yeah,
So you know, in the stock market, it's all well and good us saying, oh, I should have invested in 1999, sold in 2003, reinvested at the end of 2003, sold in 2008. But that's all well and good. What you, like Paul says, what you have to look at is, if I invest in this project now and it makes me this, am I satisfied with that? You then have to take that on. Next one here. Okay, where is the best areas to invest? Again, it goes back to you. Basically, it comes back to you, what you're looking for. We had a project this week in just by Old Trafford, which is a river-facing development. It's phenomenal. It's probably one of the best developments we've had in Manchester, just simply because of its location, what's up and coming in the area. However, just because it's a phenomenal area, an up and coming area, and there's huge amount of money being spent on it, it doesn't mean it's right for you. So that's when we go back to, we make sure that things are right for you, the client, we make sure it fits, and then we can decide on the area after we know what your strategy is. If you've got a 1-year plan, that's going to be a totally different area to if you've got a 10-year plan. So again, that comes back down to the business side. I've got one here. I like a business plan sent. Yeah, no problem.
Anybody you want a business plan, you should speak to your broker. They'll have a little PDF they can send out to you guys, which you can either fill in online or print out yourself, and just have it on your own files, so you can then set it up and give you a basic business plan to start working from. So that's not a problem. If
you don't know your broker's email address, guys, you can also just send it to info@. So info@flambardwilliams.co.uk. So info@flambardwilliams.co.uk. Another question just pinged through. Is it better to invest in your local area and city or nationwide? Again, depends where you live. So it goes back to the business plan. Let's say, for example, you are looking for a 5-year plan. You've got £200,000 to invest, and you are open to 1 or 2 beds, and you're happy with 5-6%. Well, we could narrow that down and say, well, okay, take this latest development. That's ideal for you. However, if you're in a particular, if you've got 100,000 and you're looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath because that's what your local area can offer, well, that's totally different. It may be better to invest in your local area. What we typically say is 9 times out of 10, people don't live in buy-to-let areas. You know, the buy-to-let areas over the last sort of 5-6 years have been primarily London, then Manchester, Birmingham, Sheffield, Leeds, Liverpool. That's it. They have been the best returns on your money. But typically, the majority of our clients don't live in those particular areas.
I mean, for me, the question to do a very broad cover, is it best to invest? You know, if your local area offers the best returns, that's the best place to invest in. If it doesn't, you shouldn't be constrained by geographical demands. So for me, it's where you get the best numbers for what you're after. So if your business plan, we go back to this business plan again, where you've got your return on investment or a growth story, you apply that across the map of whatever country you're in. So in the UK, you put out over, I want X% and I want this much growth, and you see where that hits on the country, then that's the best place for you to invest. There's no restrictions on where you are, because you're not going to manage it, because why would you? The management companies out there are way better at doing the job than you are. They do it at a very low rate. It's certainly not worth your time or effort to try and do that. So for me, it's geographical purely on the numbers you've set. And if you happen to be in the luckiest and the best rented area, then good, you rent in your local area. If not, you go to the area that offers you the best returns for your money. That's it.
I mean, the management agent, bearing in mind, to get someone to do it for you, it's £2 a day. That's less than a coffee. If you drink coffee every day and you go and buy that at an independent chain, then literally don't buy that coffee and spend it on that management agent. It is literally as cheap as that, £2 a day. I've got a question here. How do we know? Are you independent? And how do we know you're independent? And are you a member of any ombudsman? Yeah, well, we are independent. And how do you know? Yeah, I guess you kind of just have to take our word for it. We are independent. We're not tied to any developer. We pick and choose the companies that and the developments that we deal with. You can see that on our website. We will deal with the numerous different developers, not one or two. So if you go on certain companies' websites, I won't say who they are, but certain companies' websites, they will only have maybe 2 or 3 developers that they deal with. We deal with a number. If we like what the developer does, we move on it. If we don't, we don't. And are we members of an ombudsman? Yes, we are. So we're full members of the property ombudsman. But again, the most important thing is when you transfer your money, you go through a regulated solicitor. So that solicitor is where your money goes to. You don't pay us. It comes to a regulated solicitor. In the UK, it's law that you have to use a solicitor for any kind of property purchase or sale, and they will be full members of the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority. Next one.
Yeah, which gives a better return on investment, student accommodation or young professionals? Well, typically, we find that student accommodation hits higher returns. That's a pretty general, broad brush stroke across the whole story. If I was to delve down a bit deeper, maybe you would get some variances on that. But we typically find student accommodation gives you a better return on investment. The only downfall or downfall we can see with that, there's 2 elements to student accommodation. One, it's cash orientated. So typically, you have to pay full asking price in cash. You can't borrow money to buy a student accommodation. That's because usually the size is under 30 square meters, or it's particularly difficult. This obviously then limits your market on the way as an exit, but you do get better returns. They always sit around the 8% mark or higher net against a young professional or residential sort of renter. Tenant. The question came back as student accommodation or young professionals, which is the better one? That's a big question. I mean, young professionals are a good market to be in. They're going to give you a higher return on the property. You get a growth story when you buy residential property a bit more than you would with student. But it's a case of what you want. It's a case of what you're after. As an income model, I think student accommodation is really tough to beat. I think as an income model going forward, I think there's also another story to have with student accommodation, which is a personal opinion I have. It's an asset class that's getting more picked up by insurers and investors and funds. I think that the CML, the Council of Mortgage Lenders, at some point are going to take a look at the student market and realise that these studio apartments or this particular sector or asset class is going to be something for the future. And maybe they'll start lending into it because, as I say, it is dominated and it's very cash rich. There's no debt in it. And what's to stop banks coming to this market and allowing debt to accumulate in it? I mean, they could lend up to 50% of loan to value, and that would make a huge difference, which would then make a huge difference in the value of the properties and have a huge growth story for that particular sector. So there could be growth in that sector yet to come on PBSA from that question. But it's a preferential choice. We get a lot of people who don't like students. Again, a bit of a fallacy. Students don't smash things up anymore. These are brand new, proper apartments. They're monitored. They've got a concierge on them. They've got facilities. And again, I'll take you back to students and the way they live their life. They sleep in the student accommodation. And like a young professional, they go out. They're studying during the day. They're out in the evening. And they crash in bed at night. So they don't spend a lot of time sitting around their apartments.
Next question. What area is best for student? Again, it comes back to how long you're looking to get involved with. So we have, for example, projects which are managed for 3 years and give an 8% for 3 years. We have projects which are 5 years and give 9% for 5 years. Any of the major cities, Manchester, Leeds, London's probably a bit too pricey in regards to getting a good return, but Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield, Leicester, any of these areas you'll be absolutely fine with. Next question here. I've got here, which is multiple answers. So how do you reserve a property? Well, that basically comes down to the actual project. Everything starts with a form. So there's a simple reservation form. So just to give you the overlying process is, if it's the first time you've done this, is a simple reservation form. Now, the next step depends on the developer. Some developers have a 1,000 deposit. Some developers have a 5,000 deposit. Now, that deposit typically comes off of the exchange amount. The exchange is typically 3 to 4 weeks after your reservation. That's where you pay a set percentage. That percentage, again, can range between 15% of the property to up to 50% if you're doing student. You can pay 50% of the property if you're doing student. then you exchange, and that's it. And then you potentially have a stage payment in between. But more often than not, it's a set amount on exchange and a set amount on completion. And that's it. And stamp duty is, again, typically due on completion. It's not with student property, as you don't have to pay stamp duty for student property. Yeah, it's very straightforward process. It might sound quite convoluted, but that's why we have after sales teams here which can help out with that and make sure you're fully abreast. I think that's it, guys, all the questions. Well, look, this is going to be available, this webinar will be available in the next sort of half hour, an hour or so, a recorded version. So we'll get that out to everyone. And yeah, if people want any information, they can email us. Best one is info@flambardwilliams.co.uk. We'll go from there. Take care, guys. Have a lovely rest of the week.